And yes, we've got quickfire reflections. Please do use Slido. I would like contributions from the audience towards this, your reflections, your questions to our panel. So I'm really pleased to welcome the panel here. So we've got Mike O'Dowd-Jones from the Peninsula. We've got Sarah Spink from the Midlands Connect, who's a strategic partnership lead. We have Andrew Summers, who's from Transport for the East. We have, of course, Martin Tugwell for Transport for the North. We have Naomi Green from England's Economic Heartland. And we also have Jack Wiltshire from Western Gateway. Let's not forget.
How could you forget Rupert
Clubb as well from Transport for the South East. Thank you. So just reflections myself, really, in terms of the coverage of topics today. And like everybody else in this room, went to a lot of the sessions, and wow, what a wide range of topics. From international gateways, decarbonisation, a lot of technical work on electric vehicles, which I certainly found really useful and quite powerful work there. Lots of conversations around road user charging and the role STBs play, rail, freight, appraisal, and also rural connectivity, amongst other topics. So the panel, if you can keep your answers quite short, and please do elaborate rather than necessarily repeat the responses. And it's okay for you just to agree with your fellow colleagues. So, first of all, to the panel, and I'll start with Mike, and we can work across the panel. Briefly, could you reflect on what stands out from today, particularly what excited you and anything that you were scared by or surprised by?
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, great session today. Lots of really fantastic conversations, as we always have when we get together as STBs, and so a really good session. I think the standouts for me, a few interesting points came up. I really liked the Google Cloud commentary earlier on about the moonshot, and being very clear who our customers are, designing solutions for those customers, and it being okay to fail in the innovation space. We're all in that space, so we do need to take some risks and fail occasionally, but make sure we capture the learning from that. So that was probably the standout for me. I'm also picking up a tension, I guess, which others may want to reflect on, in that we're still talking about the need for big infrastructure, but we're also talking about the need to decarbonise, and lots of debates about alternative fuels and which is the right way to go. So I feel we're still in a very uncertain place with some big tensions that we need to work through together.
And Sarah, from you?
For me, I think it was mainly about collaboration and integration. We've heard a lot today about working together, but I think that whole integration thing, whether it be modes, whether it be the sort of transport world and the planning world, whether it be political parties, whether it be government departments, this whole sort of integration and working together, I think has come across really strong. And also the technology, how we need to use the technology, but again, we need to make sure it integrates with people's daily lives. We can't enforce it on people because they need to be able to understand it. They need to understand how to use it. So it needs to have that collaboration, integration again. But that's what's come out. Almost every session has had some element of that coming through it.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I had integration down as well, so just had a different take on it, but this is absolutely fundamental for what we're doing. And I took away from the National Highways panel that I chaired the huge constraints that we're facing going forwards, particularly financially. And a lot of people have spoken to me today about not just the need for integration in the transport sector, but the reliance on other sectors, particularly energy infrastructure going forwards. We've talked a lot about EVs today. That relies on grid transmission. So the integration, and I guess this is part of our job going forwards, is to integrate with the other infrastructure providers, so we have that more joined up approach.
No, it's really, really powerful. Yeah, absolutely. On the energy in particular, I agree with the electric vehicle charging and shift to that. Martin, your reflections?
I'm getting a sense that there's a shift in language, and that encourages me, because it feels like, compared with 12 months ago, we're talking about the need to focus on the user. What are we trying to achieve? What's the outcome? Why are we doing things? And that might be a simple thing, but it's actually quite fundamental to making a difference, because if we recognize and accept that doing what we have been doing is no longer the solution moving forward. Accepting and recognizing the need for change is the first part on the way to be able to make some change. So the change in language and the change in emphasis I find really encouraging.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Naomi?
Thanks very much. I echo the reflections about the shared endeavour, and my reflection on listening to conversations today is about the great opportunity that those who operate in the public sector can have in terms of managing complex political environments, complex funding environments. And actually, when we work together with the agility and ambition and extent of knowledge across the private sector, actually those two together is really, really powerful. And the STBs are in a really good position to work with you to do that and to navigate across Highways England, departments, and Great British Railways going forward. So I think that's what I took away, is actually by us all focusing on what we're really good at and someone pulling it all together, we've got a really good opportunity to do something great.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Thanks, Sarah. And Jack?
I think probably highlight for me is just seeing all the different transport modes coming together, and I must say I don't think I've seen that come together quite so well in any other environment, so that's been a real a key point for me. One thing I particularly took note of, I think, was in the Minister's introduction. We're talking about walking and cycling being the natural choice, and I don't think I'd really heard that language coming quite so strongly before. So it'll be very interesting to see how that embeds itself in the way that we operate in the next few years.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jack. And Rupert?
Yeah, Mike, I mean, I think, what they said, plus
Yeah.
the fact that so many people are here today is a shared ambition, isn't there? We set
It
out
is.
these transport strategies, we set out what we want to achieve for places, for people who use transport, and, we're all in it. I think the second bit for me, thought Google, fascinating. We all know now that it's not a bunch of people sitting around on beanbags coming up with whiz-bang ideas. It is, although looking at the nods, there's a bit of that possibly. And that the same rigour that we have to apply in our businesses applies there. And I think there's a lot we can learn from them. And then finally, and I might be showing my age here, I think Mr. Ben, the way that the shopkeeper, Andy Ryan, popped up at every session, consistently delivering, was quite outstanding.
Yeah, that's really good. And my reflection on that as well, Rupert, is the attendance here. Over 500 people certainly registered for this event from different organisations and so on is really powerful. And it's great to see the attendance and the full theatre here today. So I suppose to colleagues here then, what are the top 3 biggest priorities or things you would like to get to grips with in your region, starting with Mike?
Yeah, so for us, the Peninsula area, it's all about connectivity for us, so road, rail and digital. So we know our productivity could be boosted with better connectivity to the rest of the country. And also, we've got a 2.3 million population, but we have 23 million visitors a year. So catering for our visitors' needs as well as our population is a big issue for us. The other big one for us as a rural area is finding a new, more financially sustainable model for rural mobility. We have a very dispersed population. 47% of our population live rurally and have to travel long distances. For a lot of those people, walking and cycling are not really viable options. So that really makes the decarbonisation challenge that much harder for our area, and something we're working on hard, but it is a difficult one to crack. And then the third one would be freight. For me, I know we know from our freight studies, we've got a lot of empty freight running around. It makes deliveries and then it comes back empty, so I think us working with the freight industry to get more efficient and maximise the opportunities there is a big one for us as well.
That's a really good point. Thanks. Sarah, your top 3?
I've actually got about 5 written down.
Oh, yeah.
I
Give it
thought,
to 3 then.
I thought I'll decide
Okay.
when I get up there.
Yeah.
I thought what
Yeah,
I'll do.
that's
Also, I
fine.
thought, if I'm a little further down the chain, it might be an issue.
Yeah.
I think, and I think the majority of us, that east-west connectivity is still an issue. We apart from Western Gateway, that getting east-west can be very, very difficult across a lot of our regions, and whether that be road, rail, e-scooter, that needs to be addressed. I think accessibility, and I'm not just talking physical accessibility here, how we get information, how we decide what mode we want to take, that really needs to be looked at, because it's a whole journey. It's not just, oh, I'm going to take the train. It's how do I know my options? So it is accessibility, and it is making sure the services are there, but it's making sure people are aware of them as well. And then third one, I think I will go with a bit of what we were saying earlier, that sort of whole facing the future together. I think it is about transport, but it is about skills. It's about economy, efficiency, energy, all these things together. And we know that, funding is constrained, finances are tight. But how do we keep those sort of wide horizons, even though, there's not so much money in the purse?
Great. No, thanks, Sarah. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, for us, this is kind of bread and butter for STBs, because this is what's set out in our strategic transport plans, which is required in legislation for STBs to deliver, to set that strategic agenda. So for Transport East, we submitted our transport strategy to government recently and have just received endorsement of that. It sets out the requirement for net zero transport infrastructure going forwards, connecting our growing towns and cities, not only within the region, but to the rest of the UK as well, picking up what Sarah's talked about in terms of east-west connectivity. Energising our rural and coastal communities. 1 in 5 people live on the coast, 1 in 3 people live in rural areas. And we had a great session earlier on about that. It feels like that's a really important priority for our partners. And then unlocking international gateways, building what Gareth talked about earlier on. We've got 3 international airports, 13 ports, ensuring that we deliver surface access to those alongside the other priorities.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrew. Martin?
So, kind of following on from what I mentioned earlier, we've just published our second generation strategic transport plan for consultation. If you want to have a chance to contribute, feed into it, you've got 11 weeks left to do that. And I hope you do, because what we're doing there is embedding this idea of being outcome focused in a place with the user at the heart of what we're trying to achieve. And it builds on what colleagues have been saying. We've heard a little bit today. It's about then recognising what needs to happen elsewhere to make the transport outcomes realistic. So it is more about starting to shift the thinking maybe away from just being subnational transport bodies to maybe being subnational infrastructure bodies. And in that respect, we'd be no different to the National Infrastructure Commission. So I think about outcomes, place, user, focusing on the wider outcomes. But most importantly, I think collectively we've got a campaign on getting things simpler. Simplifying the number of funding streams, simplifying the amount of work we need to do, focusing on using the funds available to deliver rather than arguing the case to deliver.
Great, thanks, Martin. Naomi?
Thanks, Mike. Look, I think we've got quite an interesting year ahead of us with the uncertainty over the timing of the general election. So my thing for the year ahead is to do things really well, and to have the money that we've got and to spend it well. So we were delighted with the progress made on East West Rail recently. Let's do that well. Let's look at things like how we can deliver on investment that the government is putting into the regions and spend it well. Let's make sure we've got the people that are able to deliver these projects, looking at skills and things like that as well, innovation, all those things that together help us spend money well. And if we do that, we're in a much better position to continue to lever for the points that Martin's just made, because we do things well as a sector, working public and private sector together. And I'm allowed another one because I don't think that was
that's
good.
okay. No.
So I'm just going to say where we do have schemes that are really good, like Ely Junction, for those of you who know it, it's a scheme that will do well if it is invested in. And I think those where we've got the evidence, it's got a huge BCR, it's a rail freight scheme, or it's a rail scheme that really enables rail freight to flourish. Those are the schemes that we should be building, and we should be building them well. And the special gift for you.
Okay, no, thank you. Jack?
Probably some risk of repetition, but better connectivity as a whole has to be, our top priority. Within Western Gateway, rural mobility is certainly really important for us, but we cover those elements. So I'll just touch on the EV charging network and alternative fuels. If we were within 7 years of not having new sales of internal combustion engines, we need to have a robust network of EV charging and alternative systems for fueling. It's just not acceptable to be in a position where people have got range anxiety driving electric vehicles. I think that's potentially a detriment to our economy, and it's less inviting, I think, to our area. If people think, well, I'm not going to go there because I might not be able to get back. is really quite concerned. So I'll go for that as my third priority.
That's good, thanks. Rupert?
I mean, it is, I think Naomi or Martin touched on it, it is going to be a tricky couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, I've just set out a strategic investment plan that sets out £45 billion worth of expenditure over the next 30 years, some really transformational stuff. And it's not just plucked out of the air, it has the evidence, it has the high-level business case to say, you invest in these things, you're going to get the benefits that communities and places need. And I think we've just got to hold it amongst the political turmoil, because it is going to be political turmoil. You saw that in the May elections, real, there's challenges, differences of opinion, different politicians, general election coming, and trying to make sure that the evidence base is really, really clear, that the data and user outcomes are clear, I think are important. And, from my perspective, STBs are here to stay. The ability for us to speak with a single voice on the issues that affect the region is absolutely paramount. And I think, getting that evidence base together, holding it over the next couple of years, and being ready to make those investments when the time comes.
Great, no, thanks. So just to build on that from what Jack and you've just yourself said, Rupert, which just one of my reflections today, a lot of conversations around electric vehicles and the analytics that's been undertaken and all the technical work, which is absolutely excellent. But in terms of hearts and minds, and actually, in the press, there's a lot of concern over, just building on what you said, about whether we're going to actually deliver the step change that's required. So what's the role of STBs in convincing local members, mayors, MPs on the step change that's required? Any views from the panel? Go on then, Martin, yeah.
So I don't think it's about convincing them.
Okay.
I think it's about helping them make the case. And that's where we've got to be really, really sharp. We've got the evidence within the STBs and at local level. It's about providing the political decision makers with the evidence and the options that allow them to engage. Because if I think about my board members, they want to go faster and further on things like reducing the environmental impact. They want to grow the economy. They're up for that. What they're looking for us as a profession, individually and collectively, is the help to be able to sell this. So I don't think we've got to convince them.
Okay.
It's about how do we help them.
No, thank you, Martin. Any other views? Yes, Sarah?
Also, I think it's about bringing them together, because you've got, within our patch, we've got sort of 21 local authorities. If they're all saying, we need to do this, how are we going to do this? They feel very alone. They feel panicked. They're like, what do I do? But actually, bringing them together, you've got those economies of scale. You've got, even economic economies of scale, because you can get areas working together. And I think it takes back to what Rupert was saying, that one voice sort of coming together. And that's just one region. As STBs, I'd like to think we've matured over the last few years. And now we work closely together, but we're very careful not to duplicate work.
Yeah.
So what's happening in one area, we talk to each other. So we make sure that experience is benefiting everybody. So I think it's that sort of collective wisdom of sort of saying to those local authorities, you're not on your own, we're here as a group, as a collective.
Yeah. No, that's very good, thanks. Sorry, Rupert. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a follow-on, really. You think about the transport strategies, investment plans, they're not sort of done in isolation. They're done, in my case, 16 local transport authorities, 5 local enterprise partnerships, forever how long they last, and, local planning authorities. They all come together and say, actually, these are the priorities for our region. That is extremely powerful. And I think, frankly, it's powerful for ministers knowing that you've got that political weight, and it's not, it's cross-party support to the interventions and things that are going to make, ultimately, their communities and their regions prosper. And I think Sarah's point about how STBs have matured, you've got 7, I think, really powerful organisations here that want to do the right thing for places and for communities and for users. And it leads in, I think it was Martin that mentioned earlier on, the Institution of Civil Engineers' recent consultation on English National Transport Strategy. And I'll pause there, Mike, and you can fill the gap on that one.
Just coming to one of the questions that, and people have talked about it a little bit, touched upon it, about questions over the future of LEPs. So what, in the view of the panel, is the role or opportunity for the STBs to influence and support regional investment. Any views? Yeah, Rupert?
I mean, just on LEPs, I mean, our
Yeah.
board take the view that business representation, and I'm sure I'm speaking for colleagues here, is really important, and they need to be around the board because they bring a different perspective to locally elected members. So, you know, whatever the future might be for local enterprise partnerships, there is a really clear role for businesses as part of the decision-making on our boards.
Great, thanks. Any other views? Yep.
Can I just reflecting on a number of conversations I've had today. A quite surprising amount of people have talked about skills to me today.
Yes.
We've got colleagues here from the academic sector who are generating the next generation of people that are going to work in this industry and also our integrated industries. We also had private sector colleagues here today talking to us about the need to plan workforces going forwards. And businesses that are absolutely fundamental to delivering our strategic infrastructure plans. And so whilst LEPs have traditionally been key parts of our boards, we need to ensure that the private sector continues to be represented on those boards. For the issues we've talked about, skills is just one, but there's many other reasons why we need to be integrating with private sector decision making.
Brilliant. No, thank you. Okay, any other comments or observations? No, okay, so I'd like to invite Martin Tugwell, in the capacity as the chair, to close the event. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you. I'm going to come over there if I might.
Okay,
Mike.
that's fine.
Thank you, colleagues, for that. Stay where you are for a minute, because I think it's quite powerful to see that you get 7 organisations together, and then if you added the devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales and the Northern Ireland, and bring London along, and you've got 11 organisations that could sit around the table and have a good conversation with the Department for Transport and the government about the way forward. Thank you, Mike, for chairing that last session for us. Can I also say thank you to a number of people? It's that time when I need to do that. First of all, can I say thank you to Esme and the communications group, because there's a lot of work that we do as on the technical side, but the comms group led by Esme this year have been the ones that have driven us and actually pulled this all together and done all the work around collecting people together for the parallel sessions. So thank you to Esme and the comms group. Thank you to Meeting of Minds for helping put on this show, and also the supporters for working with us as well. That is very much a part of what we're trying to do as STBs, working with the whole of the sector. And thank you also to Birmingham for hosting us. This is the second year we've been here. We'll be moving on next year, I think, to Manchester. Look out for the date at some point as to where we're going, when it's going to be. But I think, as Naomi's touched on, it's going to be an important 12, 18 months. And so the work that all of us are doing and working with you to set the agenda is going to be important, not just for the current government, but in setting the agenda for the next government of whatever colour. And that's where I think we do add real value. We wanted to get across this year how we are working together. We wanted to get across the work that we have done and how it can help make change, because we do need to be agents of change. We need to use the evidence that we've got to understand where we're coming from. But more importantly, we need to have the vision to understand where we're trying to get to. And that's then about helping to work with decision makers at all levels to achieve that. I'm going to just finish off by reflecting. We've heard quite a few people welcome Chicasta's and others' colleagues' comments about moonshots. And those of you who've worked with me for far too long will know that I don't necessarily answer the questions set to me, which reminded me, bringing those two together a nice way. I quite like John F. Kennedy quotes, which is very appropriate for a moonshot. But I'll leave you with this one. Conformity is the jailer of freedom and the enemy of growth. If we're about growth, we've got to break conformity, we've got to set the new norm, and that's what we're going to do together, you, us, and working with the government. Thank you ever so much for coming along today. Have a very safe journey home, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year at the 3rd STB conference. Thank you very much.